Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some MeatEater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey, this is Tyler.
And I'm KC.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast.
What's going on my woods people? This is The Element Podcast. It's brought to you by First Light. We are chilling inside. It's starting to heat up. Summertime's getting here. You guys are thinking about fishing, but some of the best, actually the best deer hunting video we've probably ever put together is just released now.
Wow.
On the MeatEater YouTube channel. KC, we had a good time producing this one, didn't we?
We sure enough did. You know, one of the great things about production is that we get to hunt. So it's pretty nice. Guys, it looks like we have a lot of fun on these videos.
We don't.
And we have a blast, actually. So, actually, this
Listen,
one is ups
too
and
much
downs
fun,
and
sir.
all this stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. If it's too much fun for you, then, maybe you can go find a different video.
Too much
But
fun. What's that mean?
But we, of course, are sitting around with not a lot of stuff to do in film or whatever. And we decided that we could put a video together for our YouTube channel that shows some of our better shots that we've made for an educational purpose. We put all kinds of shots on deer. Sometimes it's not ideal. Sometimes it's an absolute rip, and it's everything in between. But it's good to know where to aim on a target. And I think that, especially if you're a newer archery hunter, or you've hunted with rifles a lot in your life, or if you just, like to see deer getting shot, either way, it's good to kind of watch this stuff, because where you hit a deer with an arrow is different than where you hit one with a gun. And not a lot of people think about that, but it really is true. So if
Dude, I've been bow hunting for nearly 20 years, and I mean, I'm still learning stuff about where to shoot deer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Via my videos and my mistakes. You know what I mean? So, I mean, even if you're not a new archery hunter, I don't know. I just think it's always good to watch and to assess. You know, there's times when obviously you want to veg out and have some entertainment, but I mean, if you're trying to learn something, hopefully this video can teach you a little something. It's not like we're not like teaching through each shot, but you're getting to watch shots and learn from them.
We put some stats and stuff on there about range and some other stuff too, so you kind of know about how the deer's acting and where the arrow flight is headed and all that kind of stuff. So go check out that video if you haven't. Fun summer watch, a good thing to brush up on, more than just like a bullcorn video. It's always good to try to be getting better at what we're doing. And what we're doing is hunting and killing deer. And we did not do any better at that than what we did in this trip in 2022.
Yeah.
It's about as primo as it gets.
Killed them pretty good.
We killed some big ones pretty good. If I do say so myself.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a lot of fun with a lot of difficulty in between there. And this all kind of dates back. You've hunted this area for a really long time. I've hunted it for quite a while myself. And we learned a lot through the years hunting the spot.
Yeah, just like with hunting and shooting at deer, we've had a lot of struggles through spending time here over the last several years together, especially hunting, we've kind of, po-boyed it a little bit, and there's not a whole lot of po-boying to be done in the state of Kansas because there's not a whole lot of public. There is some. It just depends on really the place or the region you go as to how much public you have. Well, there's not just a ton overall in the state anyway. So that's, for us, one of the things that a few things we've kind of struggled with in the past have been the lack of public, which creates a little hunting pressure, especially when you get to the rut and those kind of things. And, you kind of need the rut on some of these public places because Kansas is a bird state. Mm-hmm. And these different types of public sometimes are really taking into mind the fact that birds can utilize these different public pieces. And so there's not a whole lot of cover in a lot of areas.
It ain't like turkeys, which are birds, but it ain't like turkeys where like good turkey cover is probably pretty good deer cover. Mm-hmm. Good pheasant ground is usually, maybe pheasants, but good quail ground is not usually.
Yeah, I mean, and pheasants too. I mean, because
so they can live in some open stuff, but they like marshes too.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a CRP field that's a foot and a half blue stem next to a wheat field or a cornfield, like pheasants are going to probably be there. And people like there will be value placed on the state by that property to bird hunters, and so and that creates hunting pressure. That creates, because everybody is, as a deer hunter, is flocking to places with trees, and it makes it tough to locate deer, and then really, really tough to get them killed once you locate them. So some of the things in that vein that we've encountered in the past is, we start out trying to, hunt these different public parcels. Well, we figure out real quick, there ain't a whole lot for us that's going to be good. So
you end up driving hours.
Oh man, I remember the first few years you and I hunted together. We were driving like crazy. We'd be like, well, this one's pretty far, but if we can go check it, we can at least either knock it off the list, or or we know it's a good place and maybe we need to be there. So we did a lot of driving, and we ended up kind of coming to the conclusion that, man, if we could get some permission, like it would be great. So we did just that. We worked pretty hard, called some people. We actually have an episode on the Element YouTube channel where you see us basically throw a party because we get a couple of permissions, on some different stuff.
Yeah.
And
we end up hunting those pretty quick.
Yeah.
You hunted from the ground
like
on
that
one,
night.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've hunted, some of that stuff we've been able to hunt for a few years. Some of it we got, 1 year's worth, and then it kind of just fell out of our grasp. But, through that, you end up running into a bunch of kind of grumpy people too sometimes. And I think this will be anywhere. But, these people in certain places where deer reside are not used to encountering too many people and don't probably like sometimes. It's weird. You get some people that like, they hadn't talked to somebody in 6 months, so they're ready to talk to them. Sometimes they're like, I came out here, so I don't have to talk to people.
I live here, so I don't have to see you.
So you kind of get that thing.
That really happens when you knock on a door.
Yeah, and so it's tough. You have to be able to kind of just, eat that stuff a little bit, or else, you're not very, and I don't do it very well. Neither one of us do, I don't feel like. So we have to really like muster up courage and gumption to go start calling people and knocking on doors. I
don't like mean people, man.
No,
I like dealing with nice people or no people.
Well,
that's the good part.
Don't get on YouTube.
That's for real. That's a good part about when you can find some public ground to hunt. You don't have to mess with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you and I have always been like, well, we could spend a lot of time trying to encounter some mean people and come across a really nice property potentially. Mm-hmm. Or we could be like where when I moved back from Dallas to East Texas, I spent 2 years trying to get permissions and couldn't get anybody to even remotely let me hunt. And it was, instead of spending those 2 years doing that and getting denied, I could have spent 2 years on the maps learning how to hunt a specific property and, public in Texas, and maybe, had a lot more fun probably. So we kind of have this mentality when we go out of state sometimes. It's just like, let's just hop on and map scout our way into some deer instead of trying to find the primo place where literally you just walk in and it's awesome, because those are hard to come by, but they're not impossible, and you can spend your time either way. So we kind of did a little bit of both of this, and this is where we were really cutting our teeth on how this all shakes out, traveling to hunt, public land, map scouting, and all this and that. It is where we were learning very fast a lot of what we now are able to kind of really put into practice and tend to be successful at sometimes, So that's, those are some of the things that we dealt with early on. We've also had sickness for some reason, like year after year. And I don't know if it's because when we get to early November and get a cold front and we've been going, it's that time. It's like that time of year, and we're just that deep into the season that we're exhausted and our bodies are just breaking down a little bit.
Well, there is like an old adage too of like weather change making you sick. So I wonder if there's something, because we're up there for when it like kind of goes from fall to winter somewhat. That's like the time the rut happens for a lot of the country. So there might be that aspect of you just out in colder weather.
Yeah.
And well ago you said something about eating something. I was like, eating dust is what we end up doing a lot, and that makes you sick too. We were just talking about how in New Mexico, Greg was eating a bunch of dust, from having the windows down looking at stuff. And, got to him pretty good, and I know it happens to you quick, but even all of us,
But I mean, I got 2020, I got COVID for the first time while we were up there. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I was sweating like crazy every night. I didn't feel terrible, but like I wasn't going out in the mornings because I just had chills and stuff. And we just thought, well, I'm just sick or whatever. So it was I think it was kind of warm, and there wasn't hardly anything moving. It's kind of early November. We decided to go back and go home or whatever and recoup and come back to Kansas. Well, on the way home, we grabbed some Whataburger, and I can't taste the fries at all. And I was like,
I remember you saying that, because I think that was early on in some of the COVID stuff where maybe that was the thing, but people didn't talk about it a ton with the taste losing. You were like, man, these are the worst fries I've ever had.
You just don't think that it's going to happen to you, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think they put a lick of salt on these things,
Yeah.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks, I was like, I got COVID. And so if you've ever watched the Ranch Buck video, which is on our channel, it's for some, it's awesome. For some, it's not their cup of tea, but it's an hour and a half long. And in the beginning of that video, I talk about, this is from 2020, I talk about the COVID that kicked this whole thing off. So I had COVID in Kansas, came back, and, the Ranch Buck is discovered, and then starts an, 18-day process of trying to, figure out how to kill this deer. It's a really cool video if you're into like longer videos and stuff and want to watch kind of a story video. You can find it on our Element channel, but that is like where, the sickness of Kansas for me started in a November sickness in 2020. And then I had it in 21, and then we had it in 22, which I didn't really get sick till we had, about the time we left Kansas this year.
You got dead dog sick in 21.
Yeah.
I had never gotten sick up there until this past season, which we'll talk about a little bit more.
Yeah. So, well, and really I think, 17 was when we killed Nameless, which is another video on our channel you can watch if you haven't. Really back when we were doing some kind of just trying to do super high production film stuff. It's really fun, It was a really fun challenge.
We were dead broke trying to make the highest production stuff.
Yeah, and now, we are kind of full circle and trying to make really, really high production stuff, but just in a different way. It's hard to explain to those who aren't into it, but it's really cool. It's another challenge that we've added to the whole game. Well, we go through that, and you're like, oh, I definitely want to hunt this place. So 2018 showed that actually it wasn't like it was in 2017 every year. It was pretty difficult at times, and we spent some time hunting 2018. We were so broke. We went up there a couple times. I ended up finally you had to work, and I went up there in December and shot the Frankenstein buck, which is titled Oldest Buck Ever on our channel. And, that was our first, what you'd call viral video. I think I released it, had like 2,000 views for like 10 months. And then all of a sudden the next November, it was like 100,000 views in 3 weeks.
That's fun.
It was a cool time, but at the same time, it was the first time we ever dealt with people that were hateful on YouTube. So it was a little bit of a learning experience there. But
we've learned a lot since then too, from the Frankenstein shot. Like, you and I have killed a ton of deer since then, which means you shoot more deer. Mm-hmm. And so kind of back to this video we were talking about, a lot more from the shots and the outcomes, right? Where, like, looking at the Frankenstein footage right now, I'm like, oh, that deer's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, not just retrospectively, not just because I know the outcome, but because we've shot a lot of deer and we know what happens when you hit them in certain places. And, like, I remember our phone conversation, we didn't know what was going on whenever that happened, because...
Thanks to Justin Wright.
Yeah. But... had a camera malfunction. You were self-filming on the ground.
Yeah.
And so the shot wasn't on film, so we didn't get to look at it. But he was bleeding pretty good, but it was like low and back. Mm-hmm. And we're like, I don't know what, and then you end up letting him sit overnight, which is the right move, and the coyotes ate him, right? So it's like, sad deal, whatever. But now we know, like, we'd have a lot more confidence in going and looking for that deer or what to do.
Well, this is part of the deal is we've learned every year more and more. And we struggled in 2018. And then in 2019, dude, the amount
That was 18?
Yeah, that was
Frank
18.
was 18.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
In 2019, the amount of encounters with nice bucks that you and I had was just... I mean, 18 too. You had remember we rattled in that buck in 18 that
I missed.
That hit hit blue stem with.
Well,
or
I
whatever.
was using what I thought was a heavy arrow at the time, 470 grains with the Rage on the front of it. And who knows what happened, but about the time my arrow got to the deer, it was flying sideways through the air, which is never good.
It's hard to make it go into the animal when it's flying sideways.
It is. They don't like that.
But so that kind of really starts to your journey of broadheads. And the next year, we both are shooting 2-blade heavy arrow setups.
Well, and we went to the thing, right? Like the heavier arrow, decent FOC, not anything ridiculous, nothing in the 20s, right? But like 16 to 18% FOC type stuff with cut-on contact broadheads, which is not something that Tyler can shoot well because of the way his hand is made. So he's already kind of like somewhat handicapped, but you still do pretty well with it.
Killed 2 deer, but they're both close,
This is 20?
It's 19.
You were shooting those in 19?
Yeah. We went to Iowa. I
swapped then.
Changed my setup to go shoot big deer in Iowa.
That's right. That's right. Because I shot them when we went to the Gila.
Yep.
And then you got some after that. Mm-hmm. And we were shooting that stuff. And lo and behold, no matter what you do, archery's hard.
Yeah,
that's the thing that nobody
really
wants to
right.
admit to.
Mm-hmm.
Archery.
What they want to think is that they can control everything in an archery shot, and we kind of know how control happens. But
before we get to like whiny here, let's just say that this is a minority of people who are this crazy about this stuff, right? I think a lot of people understand if you spend enough time in the woods, you know that there's so many variables that are outside your control. It's just like we were watching a Dude Perfect video earlier because it's really entertaining. And Tyler was talking about Tyler, I don't know, what is it? They go by Ty? Is that what he goes by?
I don't know. TT, something like that?
I don't know. So he was talking about how many variables there are in letting a basketball go from 800-something feet, and how, like, sooner or later you just have to understand that God's going to want you to make that goal or not.
Yeah.
And that's how we at least look at deer hunting. Like, sooner or later you have to understand that there is risk involved in what you're doing. There is wound loss involved with archery hunting, and you are intentionally handicapping yourself when you use a bow.
Yeah.
And if you can't live with that, then you probably don't need archery.
Here's the thing I don't understand is, like, it doesn't matter. Maybe not, but I think everybody's trying to kill something.
Yeah.
Like, that's the goal
of
hunting. Mm-hmm. So when you make a bad shot, why are we so upset that you know,
killed it
or hurt it or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
we're trying to kill it.
We're not trying to make bad shots.
No.
We don't want to make them. It's upsetting. But it's at the same time, it's not a thing to make you stop hunting.
Dude, it's part of the human condition. Like, you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So,
and you can either show it on video or not.
that's right. Yep.
So whoever you're watching on video, they're either showing it or they're not showing it.
That's exactly right.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But in 2019,
Yep.
yes, in Kansas, I hit a deer high in the shoulder. I was shooting a Matthews Triax, which is a fast bow that's squirrely, and that's the nicest thing you can say about it, probably. But with those fixed blade broadheads, pretty tough to shoot. I've learned a lot since then. And I shot at a deer when it was dead quiet at 30 yards while his head was up, and hit him high in the shoulder and lost that deer to coyotes. And learned a lot from that shot. And then what did you do?
Well, I mean, 19 was an incredible year as far as like encounters go. And I was kind of getting to this, that like we learned so much through these encounters, because I know, like there was a few times like we just didn't close the deal, at least in Kansas. I killed in Iowa. I killed on Texas Public that year, actually. Best buck I've ever killed on Texas Public. Best buck I've ever seen on Texas Public, probably. And, but you and I had like an incredible rut trip there in Kansas where we saw a bunch of deer and had some really close calls. I know I had like 3 bucks fighting at one point. That's on video on Public. I had the last day we were there for our rut trip, we're leaving early because you have to get back to teach class that night. And we were going to leave at 9 or 9:30. Well, at that time, I was like, okay, that was when we were going to start picking up. We decided. So I put the camera on me, and I'm like doing my closing interview. Well, it's been a fun time, you know. We saw a bunch of bucks or whatever. And then all of a sudden I hear something. I'm like, look over, and there's a 135-inch deer on Public, 40 yards from me, and all my stuff's packed. And I'm like, dadgummit, I get my grunt call out. By the time I get a call out, he's like, 35 degrees off of my wind. So by the time I hit him with a call, he's just going to go ahead and swoop on downwind, check that out before he actually comes back into range. And,
slim
it's just,
chance.
Yeah, it's just, it's desperation.
But you got
right?
to.
But and so we learned through that. I actually had a miss that year where I was grunting and rattling at a buck on that trip that was like 120 yards away or so, and he wasn't reacting at all. There was does in the field with him. Well, and this is a permission that we got, right? And just a small place, and they were in this little cornfield. Well, he kind of I move or something a couple of yards or whatever, and he's all of a sudden he's gone. I'm like, what just happened? Did he go back in the brush over there? Well, I turn around like 2 minutes later, and this deer is coming at me from the road, like the completely opposite way that he was. It just freaked me out. And so I shot at him and missed low right in between his legs, basically. And then you, on that trip, you had back-to-back hunts, like afternoon and morning hunts.
That was a permission place, and what we're about to talk about is a permission place. So, like, one of the keys up there that we found was just trying to find a place to hunt that's not public, because, I mean, how many tree stands do you see in a place where there happens to be trees?
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So having a place where you can set in a tree stand on a private piece and not have
no other tree stands.
There's no other tree stands.
That's pretty nice.
No other dudes.
Yeah.
I got kicked out of a tree stand while I was on Public, But you had like 2 really, really great deer within like 50 yards of you on those.
Yeah, which was
encounters.
too far for me to shoot at that point in time. And that kind of bit me in the butt later still. But
that's part of the setup too.
Yeah.
You didn't feel super confident in, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't. I learned a lot since then too.
Yeah.
But we had corn out there because you can bait in Kansas on private, and but I still didn't think that like I was going to be able to shoot a deer over the bait pile. So I set up on just like the field edge, thinking that deer were going to cruise the field edge. Well, no, there's 2 giant mature bucks walking in the corn and eat.
Yep.
So 50 yards on a windy day in Kansas when your trees swaying.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't feel comfortable at that range in general, you just don't do. And I didn't take the shots. And then later in the same year, you and I stalked a buck that was on lockdown with a doe.
Yep.
And the shot was 50 yards and didn't take it then.
Yeah.
And now,
Feeling
am I
a little more
taking a
confident about
50-yard shot?
Yeah.
I'm likely going to go to Kansas with a setup that I feel confident at that range.
And this is part of this deep dive into the broadheads that you especially have done and I've done too. And we've tried to make sure, if we're going to talk about this stuff and have opinions, then we hope that we can have had some experience with it. And so we go through 2019 with all those encounters, those close calls. I don't kill a buck. You shoot and have that buck that gets eaten by coyotes
Real
at the
down
end of the year.
dumps.
We had other encounters we hadn't even talked about that were close calls with big deer. And really what this is proving to us at this point, and a similar thing happened in 20. I killed way late in the year in 20 and hunted so many times. But what this was proving to us is that there's a couple things here at play. Getting within bow range in open country when a lot of times you have to ground hunt is very difficult. And we found that to be easier when easier to get in that bow range when we were in a tree. And so that was kind of the key of getting off public.
And 20, we even went to a different area of the state completely to go find a place where there were trees to hunt out of, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work.
Yeah.
But there's also a whole nother thing with that where you're far from anything you actually know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of places to stay.
Yep, that's
There's
right.
grumpy people around.
I'm telling you. Slitting your tires and stuff.
Yeah, like literally had a flat from a guy. Now, this is unprovable, right? But my valve stem was cut on my truck.
Well,
That don't happen from driving on the road.
yeah, and I have proof of being harassed after coming out from public where I hung a trail camera on my truck. And I have proof of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's that stuff that has definitely, when you go out, you all of a sudden you run into an area where there's some people that have a vendetta against the public land hunter and think that they, kind of control a whole area. And that gets to be scary sometimes. But, we found out that the ground hunting game in open country is so difficult because really the point of the main last few seconds where everything kind of falls into line or falls apart is when you draw your bow on the ground in open country. And it really is difficult because like we've been talking about the whole time, you're going to get caught a lot of times. You have to make maybe a quicker shot than you want to. And you also have to, determine the disposition of that deer before you pull the trigger because you have to figure out where to aim on him, right? Am I going to aim low? Am I going to aim on him because he's fixed on that doe? Is he 20? Is he 30? Because if he's 30, you want to aim low, You
and I have a different, I don't know if we have actually a different philosophy, but in the moment, you and I react a little differently on that, I've noticed. You tend to aim lower than I do. And I haven't put the math to it, but or how am I trying to say this? It works out for both of us most of the time. However we do it. You know what I mean? I know that you've kind of missed some deer low. I've hit a few deer high, but we usually kill them, But I hardly ever am I aiming like bottom of the fur. I just can't make myself do it.
It's hard to do.
You do it quite a bit. You did this year. I know.
It's weird, but if I'm gonna be transparent, which we do, guys, we are try to be transparent. If I miss the deer completely low, it feels better than if I hit him and can't find him. And B, people are just for some reason they're less rage on you and YouTube if you just miss the deer completely. And that's part of the deal. Like I don't this is a cool encounter. I'd like for people to see it. But golly, if I don't hit a deer where I need to hit him, it is hard to choke down some of the comments that come towards you, man.
In 2020, I hit a deer, and this was like a at close range thing, which is kind of a newer deal for me. That deer was like, 12 yards or something, and I was not very high in the tree. And he's 1/4 and 2 pretty hard. And I just shot where you just shoot a deer, not thinking about the quarter, just all this experience stuff with a fixed blade broadhead, and ended up having to let that deer sit overnight because the shot was questionable. He was dead, shot through the liver, tipped over where we found him. But still, the situation was, just up in the air for a while because public land, way back in there, real tough access, and shooting a fixed blade like you're supposed to.
You're by yourself.
By myself.
Yeah,
Middle of nowhere, Kansas.
And that's what we've figured out too. Is like the thing about these 2 blades is you don't get a big blood trail a lot of times.
No.
And I mean, I saw it on both the deer in 2019. I mean, I literally walked past the deer, one of the Texas pub buck that like I couldn't find blood. And so I walk a big loop out of there and I see a white belly.
Yeah, you were going to go let him sit for a while.
I mean, he literally just died quick, So, that's kind of definitely what we were seeing. So it brings us through kind of 20, which we experienced a lot of weather stuff in 20. It's another thing in Kansas where like the weather tends to be, if the weather looks like there might be something inclement coming in, it can a lot of times be worse than it actually is. And we saw that a bunch in 20. I had to sit out a bunch of days. That was the year that you
sat out a bunch?
Yep.
Yeah. So
hunted some 0 degree, 2 degree days, man.
And snow, right? Like it wasn't just the temperature.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, you can't, that's the thing is like if you're trying to park on the side of the road or in a kind of rural parking area in public, I mean, you might get stuck in that stuff.
Yeah, you're not hopping on your side-by-side to go drive to your stand. You're hunting public ground, which means you're parking in a ditch.
Yeah.
And you can't do that whenever it's sloshy or icy and all that.
In the middle of nowhere. So, anyway, those are some tough things that we battled.
But
and then
the inverse of the weather is that it's also the desert.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, November 4th, it's 85 degrees, and you're not seeing a single deer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Kansas. Like, it's just it's kind of southern. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it gets big swings, big cold, big hot.
Its border is Missouri.
Yeah.
And Missouri is the South.
Yeah.
So like.
That's what they say.
We're not talking about, South Dakota is on the same level as Iowa. Right. So like we're way down from there.
So, we noticed that and then that brings us to 21. 21 is a great year for us, but I got just violently sick for like 6.5 days. And, you probably have seen the story, maybe if you've been following us at all, but another YouTube video that I killed the biggest buck I've ever killed on public after being sick for a long time. You killed a buck on public that year as well.
I did. What you would think would be a great shot from the ground at 8 yards, like a rimrock style.
Kind of broadhead.
The most critically acclaimed fixed blade broadhead that you can shoot.
2 blade, right? Two
blade with bleeders.
Great
wide, the wide vented version.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to throw any mud here, as y'all can tell. But you know what I'm talking about. Shot this deer, quartering away, hit it behind the shoulder, exited in the front chest area on the offside, and this deer was still alive like 2 hours later.
Scary.
And we had to finish it off.
Scary.
Yeah.
So that
walking around, not just like laying there, like smoked. Well, I thought, and then he runs out there and looks around.
And this is kind of where
not good.
Yeah, this is kind of where you had yours. I killed a few deer that year, and I killed them with. I started out early season on like the 3rd day, killing a nice buck with a big old broadhead, expandable.
I killed a deer in South Dakota that year with a big expandable too.
And so you're starting to kind of like be like, what should I do here? And so we kind of go through this stage in Kansas, and that basically kind of leads us into 2022, and we're both, you still keep the fixed blades in the quiver.
Always. Right. I like them. I like the idea of a fixed blade. Mm-hmm. There's a couple scenarios whenever it's just not quite the thing you want to use. I think on jumpy Texas deer. I also think on these long trips where your bow's bouncing around in the truck or you're tired or whatever it may be, a little bit of forgiveness in your setup is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Like it is real hard. People might tell you not, but if you're tuned up it's hard to replicate the human part to make it perfect.
Guarantee you, dude.
You know?
Especially when you're hanging out of a tree or something.
Hey, get out in the yard and try it. Put your big old just paddle type fixed blade on. Shoot it to your best of your ability. And then the next shot in the yard, just take your wrist and go with it a little bit and see what that thing does. You know? And now you can imagine what goes on in the field when the deer are making you go because you're out of position and you're trying to kill a deer, right?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
you can always say, well, wait on the perfect shot. Well, that's a good way to eat tofu for the rest of the winter.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dude,
The Indians did not do that.
I'm trying to be an Indian.
And
man.
I get it, guys. We're filming our stuff, whatever. Say we're making content, doesn't matter. I'd be doing the same stuff if the camera wasn't running.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to, we're just trying to do it like we're learning it and wanting it.
That's literally why we got camera guys now. That way we can just
do what we do. You know,
that's right.
I mean, but I am like, to me, it's really, it comes down to like your ethics are not my ethics.
What are ethics, Tyler?
Well, they're a man-made set of implications, I guess. I mean, basically, I shoot more than you or less than you. Probably we don't shoot the exact same amount of arrows. You know what I mean? So like, I should probably, to an extent, have a my options, right? Like nobody is going to get mad when Levi shoots one at 73.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he's a great shooter. He shot a bunch.
Without using a rangefinder. I don't know for sure if he's doing that. But
no,
like,
I don't either.
Can.
I'm just saying.
He is shooting them that far.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he's using range, but he doesn't have to because he's that good.
Yeah. I'm not even close to as good as him, but it doesn't mean that I don't shoot a bunch and shoot at distance and maybe feel confident shooting 50.
When you shot that one at 50 yards, the biggest deer of your life from the ground, were you being unethical?
Well, there was margin on the entire heart where the hole was, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I took a 2.5-inch broadhead and put it into his heart so good that it didn't actually cut out of the heart. Yeah. I mean, that's center punch.
That's
and
probably
I'm not saying,
a 12, as most people would call it.
Yeah.
So and it sounds pretty good.
I'm not trying to take credit at all. Like, I practice a lot, but providentially, that arrow went straight where it was supposed to go. You know what I mean? And so that's why you and I cry so much, is because it's literally like the Dude Perfect video we were watching earlier. It's like Ty's crying because he knows that's like God's hand in that moment. You know what I mean? And you just feel that presence, and it's a good feeling, man. And but at the same time, I can mess up a 10 or 12 yard shot, and I can promise you I can make that shot in the yard all day, every day in the dot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's just like you started out in the beginning. It's bow hunting. The margin for errors are big. You have opportunities with so many variables to mess up, and you're going to, and maybe some grace should be afforded. And I think that most people listening to this get it, man. That's what I love about this audience right here on the podcast, is that these dudes get it. They're in here week after week listening to us complain and probably complaining right along with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it.
So back to kind of real quick to kind of round this thing out. We go from having great things happen in 21 and scary moments with your deer and everything to now we're
reemphasize the smokage that you put on that deer at 50 yards with an expandable broadhead.
Yes, expandable.
At a 500 grain arrow, which is like heavy, but not super heavy.
Yeah.
Like it can be done.
Yeah. I mean, put 2 holes in them, big deer, big bodied deer. So
died inside.
That's right. Died closer to me than when I shot him.
Kind of scary. Ran at you.
It was weird, dude. He was like, if there hadn't been a lip on the edge of that draw, he probably would have been right in the bottom of that thing with me. But so that brings us, like I said, to 22, where we have to make some decisions going. We haven't really done much prep work in Kansas, even on the maps. We're just kind of relying on what we've done because we're busy up into this point. We're at this point we're making videos for the MeatEater channel, and we know that that's what these videos are going to. So it's a very busy time. We don't get to prepare like we want, and we get to Kansas, and KC's like, I guess I'm going to go hunt public, and it's 80 degrees and windy, so this doesn't look good.
And dusty,
open.
If you hunted early November this year, in much of the country,
That's right.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was tough weather.
Yep.
And across the board, not just the weather, but rut action in general we did the rut fresh stuff this year. Rut action in general seemed to be a week and a half to 2 weeks late for almost everyone in the country.
It was weird. And I don't know if this had much to do with it, but it was a major drought across a lot of the Midwest. And so we're dealing with this major drought. They're doing emergency haying in many of the places that we're going to. And we get to Kansas and we're like, man, there ain't no grass. There's not hardly any agriculture. And water might be a thing, right? So, for you kind of, water was going to be, as hunting the public side of things, you're thinking water kind of chiefly when you're figuring out which piece of public you're going to, right?
We were going in and setting up around water, kind of like ambush style. I actually did a really silly hang one night. Not hang, I'm sorry. We were on the ground. But, kind of got between two water tanks with a couple pieces of brush and kind of, sat there and felt real cool about it. But we couldn't see much and then didn't see any deer the whole night.
And
so,
you're like, oh.
Yeah, kind of like, I guess that wasn't the best move.
Well,
but we saw a few deer around, but there was some people around, and it just wasn't great. It just did not feel like I was in the game at all.
Well, and one thing that we talked about this, I think in South Dakota a little bit. I thought Eric was asleep.
He's close. I've been watching him.
So
he's having a tough time.
Y'all don't send him messages on Instagram, okay? You'll keep him up all night. So anyway, we've talked about this a little bit, but one thing that also happens in a drought is that food, it may be a little more scarce too. So with that, I decided I'm hunting a piece of private that I've hunted for years and years and years. My dad is gracious to let me hunt there. Well, I decided to go into this place. We had no trail camera in there, no data. And
we were talking on the way up too.
Yeah.
We were kind of hyping it. It was like, man, we don't know anything. But last year, there's a lot of big deer in there that didn't get killed.
Yeah, and it's so remote. There's nobody goes that far into this property, really, because they can kill big deer before they get there sometimes. So this place doesn't hardly ever get hunted, this area. And about 3/4 of a mile from there, up this draw, is a wheat field that has wheat in it. And we're like, okay, we've got something here, right? And this is where those deer would potentially bed to go up to that wheat. And so Eric and I go in, and it's hot and windy. So we set up, we get in a tree first evening, and, I'm just thinking a couple things. That in 21, the reason I'm here is because in 21, for 10 days, I chased 2 bucks on this property. If you've seen the story, you know what I'm talking about. And I hopscotched back and forth from one tree stand to another. Actually, from one location to another, I hunted a few different trees kind of around there, depending on wind and stuff. And never saw this buck. Of the 2, what I thought were 10 points, one was actually an 11 point because I saw him and I figured that out. Of the 2, this 10 point I never saw. He had some junk and stuff. He's a solid buck, big body. Never saw him, but got pictures of him. So I decide that's where I'm going this time around. And we go in there, we set up in the tree, and it's hot. I'm playing solitaire and stuff. We see a little buck come in, and we had a pretty good hunt. And, my whole idea for this trip, basically, until I saw otherwise, was to kind of sit around and hope that one of these 2 deer was still in the same area and moving up and down to this wheat. And so, that was kind of how I spent the early part of my trip. You spent the early part of your trip on the hot public, hunting some water, doing some stalking, trying to find deer. And they just weren't moving a ton, so we decided we needed to do something different.
And here's the deal. When you have limited amount of public space and we're both operating out of the buck truck, we can't be far from each other. So I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
The wind is wrong for this place and anything else I can hunt. And it's going to be that way the next 3 days. I have nowhere to hunt.
We also had a cold front come in a few days into this thing, if you'll remember.
Yeah.
And it kind of knocked out some of your game plans because for one evening, it was supposed to snow in a spot, and we just weren't prepared to go out and film and hunt in the snow for that
was a
evening.
nasty day.
Yeah, it was a nasty day.
Yeah.
And so it was like at this point in the hunt, we're starting to, it's like several days in, and we're getting kind of like depressed about our options.
I'm real
here,
depressed.
right?
And you make a good point that there may be a deeper root to my depression that we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm like feeling bad about stuff. I'm belly aching on the ground. Just, I'm not going to get to kill anything on this trip.
Like, he just doesn't do this very often, you know. So just kind of bad mood.
Decide that we are going to do the thing that we said we weren't going to do. And let's get on the phones and start calling people.
We're like, we're not doing this anymore.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some MeatEater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Well, I had a previous contact from a few years back. He didn't remember who I was, but end up getting in touch with this guy. And turns out that he didn't just have the 80 acres I thought he had. He had a lot more property. Mm-hmm. And so he decided, he's like, yeah, y'all go out there and look at it, see what you think, you know. And we went out. He's like, there ain't many trees on it. And we were like, well,
I kind of know what to do.
I told him, I was like, you know, well, last year I killed a buck off the ground and there wasn't a tree in sight. And I was like, not, you know, and I was trying to not be like big wig talker or whatever. I was just like, you know, it's something we can do.
We can make it work.
I can make it work, you know. And so I told him, I was like, it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun, you know. And he was like, okay, we'll go out there and see what you think. Well, we go out there and see what we think. It looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's promising. We also saw a buck when we were out there. It was a good buck.
Yeah.
And so that gave us a good feeling. And we're kind of...
And Michael or Greg, somebody found a pretty nice shed.
Yeah, Greg did, I think. Mm-hmm. And we hung some cameras. And we went home. We were like, let's go eat. Well, about the time we were hanging cameras, things changed a lot for you.
I had the rumbly and the tumbly. And it was like, I wasn't feeling that bad. You know, it's like, oh, I got to go. Mm-hmm. And then, like, almost didn't make it home. And then by the time it's like supper time, I'm skipping supper and going and laying down. And, you know, this is kind of gross stuff. But pretty much all night I was up going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And throwing up and the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so.
Oh, I was thinking, he ain't going in the morning.
Yeah. And me too. I'm thinking that. And then, like, I just get almost down to the dumps to the point of like, you know what? This is stupid. And somehow got it out of my system in time for, like, the normal alarm time.
Dude, I couldn't believe it. I heard you, like, making some coffee, and I was on the couch, and I was like, I opened my eyes like, no way that's KC, dude.
Yeah, I don't know how it was either. I was praying a lot that night for sure because, I mean, dude, sometimes... Oh, how can I say this and make it be true? Prayer is a lot of things. Sometimes it's pretty selfish, and God hears it all, and that's the nice thing. And I was praying some pretty selfish prayers that night. You know, like, God, just please let me feel better so I can do this thing, you know? And sure enough, I felt pretty good the next morning. I think I might have even laughed a little bit up whenever getting coffee and stuff. And I'm running late to get out to go hunting, but I actually got out on a frosty cold morning and felt what?
Michael wanting to say something.
What?
When you said you're running late, he's like, yep.
Yeah. Well, he's the one that got me sick, so.
He is.
Yeah, he threw up all over the back of the buck truck.
I forgot about that.
Between that and the gravy.
If you throw up on my truck, dude, you're out. You're out. You walk home.
Yeah. A lesser man might lay in bed for 2 or 3 days if he gets sick.
That's true.
Yeah. But, nah.
No way.
No, dude.
No.
Michael he's
Who
trying
in
to
here
act
thinks
like,
it was more than 24 hours? Yeah.
Yeah. Greg said 1 week in November.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it was that long.
He's going to crush it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
we're going to get some proof here, y'all.
Michael's going to destroy the
He's
evidence.
this is a fact checker we've got for the podcast here. His name Michael.
We'll continue on, and he might have his chance to tell this story
Maybe.
sometime.
Maybe.
But that morning, get dropped off, and Greg and I head down the hill to this spot. Kind of, it's just almost like a I got to go kind of thing. Like without a great plan, just kind of knew the wind direction. And
Not the same I got to go as the night before.
No,
though.
different kind of got to go.
Okay.
And go out and just about near observation sit. Michael had recovered by this point in time. Mm-hmm. He's going to go observe in a different spot. But ends up we can see some of the same country because it's pretty open. And I'm kind of like feeling the sickness, but just kind of the dehydration, tired stuff, Like I feel all right. He can't prove it. He's mad.
If he's going to, he better hurry.
We walk a little ways and just kind of like find a spot to sit down. We can overlook this valley. There's some ag near. We see a couple does walking around. It's like, it's just a beautiful morning. You get those this time of year. That some of those first frosts. It's still, it's pretty clear. Sun's out, and all of a sudden I see a deer walking a fence line like 500 yards away. So far that I have Vortex 12 by 42s or 12 by 50s, I think they are. Mm-hmm. And I put those up, and I can tell it's a nice buck, but it's far enough away still that like I can't tell a ton about him with 12s. And I can tell that it's a deer I'd like to shoot, especially in the circumstances. So, as you know, there's just no way too much to get to a deer that far away in the open. You can't stalk them. You ain't gonna hear a grunt call. The only hope you have is to take a couple of antlers and hit them as hard as you can together. And sure enough, it was just calm enough that morning that this deer from 500 yards away can hear the rattling antlers. And it sounds probably nothing like actual deer fighting. But this is a thing. This is a tactic that I think people get a little bit too caught up on, like the realisticness of antlers. Guys, it ain't realistic to hear that in the woods anyways. How many times have you been in the woods and heard deer fighting? Maybe 2 times for me. They don't do it a ton. So like when you're rattling, it's like not a thing that just happens all the time. Now I'm sure they fight some, but my point here is you make a sound not to sound like nature. You make a sound to kill deer. And what kills deer at 500 yards is taking 2 main beams and whacking them together as hard as you can just to get that one crack, just to make him want to investigate. And we watch this deer through the binos. He like looks around and then does a 180 to walk back down the fence. And that's when I was like, oh, this could happen. So we're watching this buck. He finds a fence crossing. It looks like a cattle trail or something. He jumps over the fence and starts heading our way. And I know that where we're sitting, it is impossible for us to get a shot. Do we have an update from young Michael?
Yeah, it was 1 day.
24 hours?
24 hours.
No way.
On the first day, there's 3 cameras. On the third day, there's 3 cameras.
Yeah, because
Okay, but that's not 24 hours. You started feeling bad about 8 p.m. on day 1. Okay, So does that mean 8 p.m. by day 2 you're filming again? Doesn't sound like it.
Well, we don't really film too much.
Let's go.
Oh, I don't know about that, sir.
We don't.
So, anyways, the men with the mics are speaking now.
There's no. Hey, it's okay. Either way, it's not as he didn't recover as quickly as him. But maybe you beat the virus up real
For
bad.
some reason, also, I just said a lesser man would have that issue. Michael assumed that he was the lesser man. I never said that.
Yeah.
So
Assumption.
he just like fell into that role, you know.
Dang, dude.
But back to the buck story. The buck responds to the antlers. And I know that where we are sitting, there is not a chance that we could get a shot off from that location. He's just going to make us out. We're up on the side of a hill, and he's going to get to 150 yards and just see us and leave. So my sick self decides to run down the hill about 120 yards and get behind this little knoll that I know this deer's going to have to choose one side or the other, and I'm pretty sure I know which side he's going to come to. So I run down the hill, and Greg runs down behind me, and this is the season of running in the deer woods for some reason. And I know they're not woods guys when we're in the open, but that's what we call them, all right? It's a thing. And we get set up. I'm huffing and puffing and tired, and all of a sudden, I see antlers poke up over the sage. And from there, you will have to go watch the video to see what happens beyond that, because sick KC might have a difficult time with holding his bow back.
About to be broke, KC.
Man, it was a wild time. What's $5? Do we have a bet?
See what happens. Everybody was surprised.
Did I say it just then? Oh, man. I'm not going to see what happens. They are going to see what happens.
That's true. Yeah. That's what you said. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, that is the episode 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Buck Truck.
Episode of the Buck Truck.
That's right. And you need to go tune in right now on the MeatEater YouTube channel if you have not, and go watch this thing, because honestly, it's the best deer hunting that Tyler and I and all these guys have put on YouTube. They killed it with the footage. We killed some deer. Potentially, you might have to go watch to make sure, right?
Yep.
And it is dadgum awesome. So, remember, go to MeatEater YouTube, check out the Buck Truck, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
River between us caused a lot of frustration. Brothers, let's forgive and forget.
The new MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.